to get started, the units command, UNITS, is where we're telling AutoCAD, here's how I'm going to be entering dimensions, and here's how I want you to report them back to me. So if it's architectural, I can type 2, and it understands that being 2 inches. If I'm in imperial, if I'm in metric, and I type 2 feet dash 2 inches, it has no idea what that is, and says that's not a valid metric dimension. So please enter it in a different way. But if we just go to architectural, and let's say precision being 1/8 of an inch. So AutoCAD just start rounding off all the information it shows us over here to the nearest 1/8 of an inch, which is plenty. A woodworker doing very high craft precision stuff might need a 1/64 of an inch, but we don't. We can leave angle at decimal degrees, that's fine. We do have options there, degrees, minutes, seconds, surveyor's units, but forget it. So architectural 1/8 of an inch. That's not going to control the dimensions. Each dimension style that we'll get to can have its own types of units and its own precision. So this is just for the drawing as a whole, as we're interfacing with AutoCAD. AutoCAD can set text height 2 ways. A fixed height that stays the same size relative to drawing objects, or an annotative height that plots the same size regardless of the scale of a plot. Today we will be considering only fixed height text. So the first thing we need to do is to make a fixed height text style current in the drawing. Use the style command to bring up the text style dialog and select one of the styles in the list on the left that is not marked with the annotative icon. Set its height to 0, select the Set Current button, and close. So when we're entering text, the trick about AutoCAD and text, if you've got a wall that's 5 inches wide and you want the room name to be in there, we don't tell it how big the letters are in terms of how they come out on the plot. We tell AutoCAD how high text is relative to other objects in the drawing. If we wanted the room name to be that big, we might make our text height 8 inches. So it's actually in terms of the drawing, the units of the drawing is where we're specifying text heights. So we can forget about point sizes, all that kind of stuff. We're not graphic designers. We're just trying to put out some drawings with sort of as few different systems of measurement as we need to keep in mind. And since we all know, how thick our walls are, we can make our letters the same way. And lastly, AutoCAD has 2 kinds of text. It's got what's called single line text, which is just like room name, about which it keeps very little information, where it is, what it says, and a little bit of information about the font. So that's single line text. Then we also have multi-line text, which is a whole paragraph, and you can stretch it, you can word wrap it, you can make it have new columns, you can have each word in a different font, sort of anything that you can do in a word processor, you can do with that. This takes a lot more space just to store that kind of information. And all these CAD programs are trying to keep their file sizes as small as they can. So if you have 300 room names in a hotel, it makes much more sense to use single line text, which might take 20 bytes per piece of text compared to multi-line text, which might be a kilobyte. So we have 2 different tools. And here under Home, under Text, we can pick the single line text tool. And there are 3 parts of information it needs to know before it can actually draw it. And one is, where do you want it? And says specify the start point of the text. It'll be just one point that it streams from. I'll just say, here. Then it's saying the height. And let's just accept that 1/4 inch height, or whatever size yours says. You just hit enter to accept the 1/4 inch. And the rotation angle, do I want it at 90 degrees? F8. So you can indicate a rotation, up at an angle, or you can just text be 0. I'll say 0. And now finally, I'm ready to type something, and we get this little cursor blinking. I'll just say world. Hit enter twice, and you're out. And it might be tiny, and I know that because it's a 1/4 inch high in the scale of the drawing. It's as big as a pencil. And you can see it compared to the leftover rectangle I had. It's 210 by 5.3. But here's this. Like anything in AutoCAD, you can select it, and then in Properties, you can change whatever you want. And let's just make the height be 6 inches. And since with architectural units, the inch mark is understood, you can just type 6, and there it goes. And just to sort of emphasize how this works, line. I'll put a line right across here, and then offset it 6 inches. It's just that high. And see what else we can do with it. This piece of text has a number of properties that we can just change right here. Justification. A lot of times with AutoCAD, you might have a circle with a letter centered in it, like a tag for a piece of furniture or something. And you always want the letter, no matter what letter it is, to stay right in the middle, centered vertically and horizontally, and that would be the middle center, is what I was looking for. So middle center would keep the text right in the same position, no matter how high or wide or long it got, just always centered in the same, right in the center of the circle. With all of these, once you select the object, then its properties show up. Otherwise, it's sort of the properties of the whole drawing. So what you're actually doing by hitting enter twice, text. If we look up here, click on a point, the first enter was sort of accepting that it's going to be 1/4 inch high, which we don't want. Let's just say that this next one's going to be 8 inches high. So you just type the height you want to replace that 1/4 inch. And then I'll leave the rotation angle at 0, but just put it in. And now I'm ready to type 8 inches high. Inches. So the next time we go to use the type tool, it remembers 8 inches high and 0, and we just keep repeating that. Just hit enter to accept those. Specify height 8 inches, specify rotation 0, more 8. So now that we've set it, let's look at a couple of things we can do with a single piece of text just all by itself. So right now I have my 8 inch, I've got my piece of text that's 8 inches high. And if you want to change the height, you can select it, and then under height, just make it what you want. So let's all make it 8, just so we're being sort of consistent. Rotation is just rotated this way on the screen. Width factor. A lot of times dimensions, you have to be trying to fit sort of longer dimensions into a space that won't fit. So you can, width factor will squeeze or expand a piece of, let's make this 1.5 inches, 1.5, sorry, just to see what that, oh, that was 11.5, sorry, 1.5. That's a little better. Or 0.5 to just squeeze it down so it's half as long as it used to be. We can change these things individually, but really the point is to be able to, like for instance, if you have 300 room names in your project, room numbers, whatever, and you want to, your junior draftsman put them all in with the wrong font and not bold, and you want to come back and change the font and change the bold. You don't want to have to click on all 300 and do that. You like to do that in one place, and presto, they all change. And that's really the main reason to have text styles. I'm going to create some new pieces of text with the standard style, and then change them all together to a new font, a new bold, a new height. And use the style properties once instead of using the object properties over and over and over again. So I'm going to do text. When I do text, it's telling me that the current text style is standard. The current text height is 8. It's not annotative, and justification is left. So that's, if you need to change something, you can, but we don't have to change the style here because it's already set on standard. So I can just specify the start point of text, click, rotation angle 0, okay. I'm just going to say text 1. And I'm going to copy that a couple of times just to have some extra pieces of stuff to deal with. I'm not sure what will happen to this one, who we have done some individual work to, so I wanted to get some that were done with the text style. So with those 4 of those 300 room names that we want to change, we can go back to the style command and pick some considerably more handsome font. I'm going to use Arial just because it's easy. But use anything you want. Let's just make that one change. All we're going to change is the font. Changing one thing at a time is smart because then you know what actually made the change. So I'm going to say, I'm going to apply that and then close. Then those all pick up that new font. I've redefined the style. These belong to that style, so they pick up its attributes. There are a couple of things that we can keep on doing. Anything that the style sets, the individual object can override that. So here this is in the, these are all now in the text in the standard style. This one has been shrunk, although the font updated. And we can do, we can change the width factor of individual ones. And that might be a case where the word dining room or butler's pantry doesn't fit in the space, so you just need to crank it down, but keep it the same, in the same family and the same height. For the most part, I try to avoid tweaks like that if I possibly can. I'm trying to get my CAD drawings to be as easy to edit and update as possible. And especially when you can update 300 things at a time instead of doing them one at a time, or even 12. I mean, you start doing something 12 times again and again and again the same way, and that's it's no way to live. There are a few things you can do to a piece of single line text. You can double click. If you want to underline just two letters, you can double click, which selects it, drag to select the text, and then Control U to underline them. And that's really about the only thing you can do. I can't make this individual letters italic or a different font within this limited single line piece of text. It's not made to do that. A couple of things, I don't know if this will come up for you guys. But you can do a couple of things with these. You can turn the text upside down, which is a lake mirror effect. And this is used, I mean, it's just it's a backwards view for people who are making molds and things where they have to have, they're doing a negative shape and have to have a positive shape comes out of it. But that's with upside down yes. Just down here at the very bottom. And that can be set for the whole style as well, but I would argue against it unless you have some overriding need for it. Backwards, I don't know if that will ever be of use to you, but it's fun to have. Now, more to the point, on this set of drawings, we'll just take this title page. If we ignore the title block and this stuff up here, there are really only two sizes and types of text. One is the titles up here, and one's for the notes themselves, so like titles and notes. This looks to be the same size as these. And people tend to have sort of fancier stuff going on in their title blocks, but just for the graphic design effect. But when you're doing either a bunch of drawings or a lot of text on one drawing, you don't want to have to keep, which is this. Probably most of the CAD drawings I do anymore have a style for notes, a style for dimensions, a style for titles, 3 or 4, half a dozen, something like that. Just keep it as clean as possible. So I have to think as little as possible about the mechanics of all that. When we start doing paragraphs and outlines, you certainly don't want to do that a line at a time. We need like actual word processing capabilities. T starts the M text command, meaning multi-line text. And as you can see up at the top, it's telling us, okay, that's the style is standard. However, standard is defined right now. The text size 8, we're good. And all it's asking for is right now is a corner and that click. And then this is more or less where I think that's going to need to be. That looks good for starters. This is a little word processor inside AutoCAD. To finish, you don't hit enter because that'll keep adding lines like in a word processor. You can click anywhere outside or click the close text editor button. And I'll do that just to be official about it. There are several ways to invoke the multi-line text tool. In your text tool, there'll be single line or multi-line text, and this is the multi-line text on your menu, or T is the abbreviation for it, or you can type out M text. After you have created a piece of multi-line text, you can select it and use this horizontal grip to make it wider or narrower. And then if you grab the bottom and drag it up, it'll just start in a new column. And then you can move the columns closer together with this guy over here. So that's sort of manipulating as an object in AutoCAD. If you want to go back and do sort of word processing sorts of things with it, you double click on it again, brings up the word processor, and then we've got a full range of, we can take this word and make it a different font. We can take Bill and make it bold. We could take Wednesday and make it red to call people's attention to it. All that stuff stays active with it. I suggest that when you create text styles, you use names that describe the role of that kind of text in the drawing, not its font or height. If you decide to call it Times Roman 4 inches high, you decide to use that for room names or something rather. Well, let's just say you decide, I really like my room names to be something else. I've got the style all set up. I'll just make them 10 inches high. But then the name of the style is wrong. You have to sort of update a bunch of things at the same time, not only what's in the style, but the name of the style. And it's also very hard for somebody coming into that drawing, even yourself a month or two or a year later, to understand what those are doing. And it's really much handier to have your style names correspond to the kind of things that they're going to be applied to, like notes, dimensions, small titles, big titles, like that. So it's very clear what's going on even years after the fact. Does anybody have a ruler with them? Any kind of tape measure or something, rather? No, I just want to measure some text back here. Join me back here for a minute, if you would. This is the most important thing all day, which is, so how big do we really want our text to be in the drawings? So, the big stuff, you can make whatever you want, but text for notes needs to be big enough to read, and not only read, but read when somebody produces a half-size set, scales it down to sort of fit in drawers. So this needs to be sort of twice as big as the minimum height that can be read. And the Army Corps of Engineers says they want everything to be 1/8 of an inch high here, so it can reduce to a 1/16, which is, we can still read that. So let's see what these are. Yeah, that's right at 1/8 of an inch, maybe a tiny bit less. Well, let's say notes at 1/8 of an inch, and then dimensions. And this is just the height of the uppercase letter or the height of the number. And well, conveniently, that's 1/8 of an inch as well. Might be a little less, but let's call it 1/8. And maybe we'll have notes be a width factor of 1 and dimensions a width factor of like 0.9 or something, just to make them a little different. So now we have to think, if I want it to plot at 1/8 of an inch, how big does it have to be actually in my drawing to come out that way? I'm gonna do it graphically, okay? I'm going to do it graphically. Okay. So, and I won't tell you how often I've sort of done this. I think, okay, in the real drawing. So the question is, how tall is that in this drawing? Well, it's 1/8 of an inch right here, but we have to give it its scale in terms of drawing units. So here's how I think about it. If we're going to be plotting this at 1/4 inch equals a foot, something that's a foot high in the drawing will plot 1/4 of an inch high. So 6 inches equals 1/8 of an inch. So I think we end up making our notes text 6 inches high. And then when it plots at 1/4 inch equals a foot, which is, let's just say we're doing that, then it'll come out and be 1/8 of an inch high. So we should be. Okay, well, there are charts you can get on the internet of all the text sizes and different sizes. It's great. Okay, so let's go make a notes text style that's 6 inches high and a dimension text style that's 6 inches high. Cherokee has shared a chart of different text heights for different plotting scales. If you lose the chart, here's a super easy way to figure out your text heights. So if you want your text to be 1/8 of an inch high, you multiply 48 times 1/8 and find out that the CAD text height needs to be 6 inches. So creating the text style for dimension is just creating a text style. So we'll use style, and we're going to go new, and I'm going to call this dimensions just to make it really clear what's going on. And it's highlighted here, so I'll say I want it to be 6 inches high. And I like dimensions to sort of squeeze down a little bit, so I'm going to make the width factor be like 0.8. This is a text style that can apply to anything, and we're going to use it when we're doing dimensions. That's the next step. So here's what I'm looking at. We make it 6 inches high in drawing units, and then once we shrink the drawing down on paper, it'll be 1/8 of an inch high. It won't be upside down, it won't be backwards, it's not annotative. Okay, apply if you have that, and then close. Just to show that that's a regular text style, I'm going to create another piece of multi-line text with that just to see it. And now we see current text style is dimensions, text height 6. Click once, click again. Oh, also, you can paste text from Word, which is handy. Let me just go get something off my desktop. So that's just pasted in from another program. And typically, like all the specs and stuff on the front of a sheet like that, somebody would put that together in Word. You don't just want to be doing all your typing in AutoCAD. It's a terrible place to do it. We do have with this, we can set tabs. There you go, tabs. You can do outlines if you got to get in there. You got to do some playing around with it to get it to work right, but there's a full complement of line spacing, bullets and numbering, all that kind of stuff within these, which I use very seldom. So I tell you, in the interest of time, let's skip over making that note text style, which we've already done, and get on to dimensions. I'm not sure where the dimension style in the drawing I gave you came from, so let's make our own. And to get into dimensions, there's a lot more going on with dimensions. It's not just a piece of text. It's a piece of text that has a degree of precision to it. How many decimal places it keeps track of, what it's touching, how far apart they are, how far the lines extend past the ticks, a lot of stuff like that. So we'll sort of deal with those one at a time. And to create a dimension style is dim style, DIMSTYL. Is it up here somewhere? I don't know. But dim style, you do it infrequently enough that the Mac version will be a little different from this, but we're pretty close. So there are two here in the drawing that I've been using. We want to create our own that has nothing to do with those guys. And it just makes it, initially it starts with a copy of whatever the highlighted one was, and we're going to call this dims. Dims. In none of these do capital and lowercase make any difference. Internally, AutoCAD converts it all to uppercase and deals with it that way. Okay, so we have a new dimension style, and its name will be dims. We can start with that one. It will not be annotative. We use it for everything. We do have a choice of whether all that, but we use it for everything. Okay, the text style had a lot of, it had word processing options to it. This has dimension options. And the first one we really want to tell it is what units are we dimensioning in? So I'm not going to work left to right. I'm going to go for sort of the most important ones first. And the units is the most important. And we can tell it how we want those to go, and we're certainly using architectural. Fractional would be like 15.5 inches instead of 1 foot, 3.5, but architectural. I would like the precision of these, let's say, to be 1/8 of an inch. formats for the angular dimensions can just be decimal degrees. That's fine. Let's maybe make it with 2 decimal places. That way we can tell if something that looks like 90 really is 90 and not like 90.04 or something. But that should do us. Architectural, 1/8 of an inch. And then we have a choice to make them how the fractions look. We can do them like this, where there's a horizontal line between the 5 and the 8, or the numerator and the denominator. Those start taking up a lot of space vertically. You can have them with a diagonal slash. What I always use is this one, not stacked, where the fraction numbers are as big as the others and as easy to read as the others. So architectural 1/8 inch, not stacked, we're good. Okay, so we're done with that. We're done with the primary units. Now let's go over to I've sort of listed the order. It makes sense to me to work with these on the last page. Now, the actual text we're going to use will be our dimensions text style, which is already set up for the height we decided. And then we have some choices about how is the text displayed relative to its line. At this point, you can see it's aligned with the dimension line. I blame everything I don't like on engineers. So engineers like it this way, which I find very hard to read. So I say align with the dimension line. Last thing to bear in mind is where is the text in relationship to the line. If you say vertically, it's centered, it drops inside the line like that, which is nice because it takes up less space on the drawing. I like it above. That's your call. And then the offset from dimension line is how far the text itself is, the bottom of the numbers is from the line. And that'll be in real number units. And so if our text is 6 inches high, an inch would be like this much of a gap down to the line. Let's just leave it there and see how it goes. And then let's go to symbols and arrows. This comes up because engineers like having dimension arrows that touch the thing over here and touch the thing over here and then has the text here. And architects tend to want to have tick marks and a gap. So you can set any of that up you want. Let's just say that we want to, for instance, if we use these little closed filled arrows, I'm going to leave this as the architectural tick. And how big that is, this is sort of in real world units. Let's make it 8 inches. And sorry for that. I guess hit enter. And those are clearly like too big, so let's just make that be 2 inches again. And that's enough to start with for here. Then we have a question of the lines themselves. This is nerdy stuff, but we just, you have to do it, or you do it at least once. On a dimension, we've got a couple of elements. First of all, if you look at one of your dimensions, it's got, and select it, you get 2 little dots right there that show up. And those are called the definition points of that dimension. And the distance between them is the distance that the dimension will display. And they're always on the layer called def points. And once you've created some dimensions, that layer will be created automatically. It does not plot. These little dots do not plot. So we have a couple things here. This itself is called the dimension line. And one of the settings is how far does the dimension line come out past the tick mark. And then we also have the extension line, and we can choose how far they extend. So let's see what those are. Again, in drawing units. So the dimension lines, that's the going across here, extend beyond ticks 2 inches. We can forget about baseline spacing right now. So let's just say that I'm going to make this be 2 inches. I make this be 2 inches. And I'm going to make this little gap be 2 inches, just to be consistent. And if you don't like it, you can do whatever you like. That's enough there. Units, text, lines, symbols. We can pretty much ignore the others except this little last one called fit. The major question is, if there's not room in there for that piece of text to fit between the two ticks, what do you want me to do? I'm saying move the text outside, as is done here. You can have it just sit there and sort of cover everything up. You can tell it to turn the arrow, the tick marks off if they don't fit inside, but really, this should be fine. And lastly, when the text does kick out, where do you want it to go? Beside the dimension line would just be over here. Above over dimension line, we'll leave it there. That should be good. Draw a dimension line between. Oh, good to know. Oh, and that last thing, dim style. Pick dims and set it current. I forgot to say that. Which means as we start doing dimensions, it'll just be the one that's automatically used. And it gets sort of highlighted or, whatever. So now when we draw something and go, well, actually, let's do something a little more interesting than that. So now we go to dimension things with the dimension tool. There are two primary ways to dimension with AutoCAD. One is just select the object that you want to dimension. The other is to pick 2 points that can be on any objects. So let's look at that first one first. Select objects, and we'll just start by just hovering over this guy and dragging out that dimension. That was easy. And that remains as an active option, so we can just keep on selecting objects and dragging that up. An important consideration, understanding of how AutoCAD dimension works is, that 2-8 dimensions that line, but they are not in any way attached to each other. I can erase the line and the dimension will stay. I can erase the dimension and the line will stay. They just happen to be in the same place at the same time. So it helps if things are acting weird. You can select the dimension just to make sure that its definition points are where you expect them to be. Here's a case where I picked that, and that's really not the most convenient place. I can't really tell the difference between the line and the object, but all these points can be moved just like any grip. We can just select the grip and move it to where we want it to go. And that way we get the gap. If I select an object or points on an angle, I still get only a horizontal or vertical dimension because my dimension type is still the default linear dimension. For that, I need to use, we got a couple of other dimension types. Linear is what we used before. Would we be an aligned dimension, which measures along the slope. And for that, we need to pick 2 endpoints, not the object, and then place it. Usually with the linear dimensions, you can pick the object and drag a dimension out horizontally or vertically. If it's on an angle, we need to pick the 2 points with object snaps turned on. And if it's on an angle, but I want to say just do the horizontal one, I won't pick a dimension style that's format that's aligned. I'll again pick the linear one. I want to measure from here to here with the horizontal one. A lot of you ended up with dimension strings that look like this, and they're ugly and a pain, and they're hard to really tell exactly what's going on if it jumps all over the place. But it's an easy move. With grips, you can select the dimension, click on this is with object snaps turned on, enabled, and making sure that endpoint and intersection and all are turned on. We can select here and just drag that down and it clicks right to it. If I want to move both of those up, we can use the stretch command just the way we used it when we're drawing stuff. S for stretch. A click and a click, right to left for a crossing window. Just select all those vertices across there, and then drag it up. It doesn't matter whether ortho is turned on or off at this point, because this is the only direction that linear dimensions can move. To repeat, you have to select anything you want to stretch needs to be inside that crossing window. So stretch, click, click, drag. Okay, there's a couple of more little things to show you. For putting together a string of dimensions, we can say pick this one and just continue right along the same line as I keep making these, and that's with the dimension, and then the option is C for continue. So just regular dimension C to continue. And basically, this is the one that I want to use as the example. So I'll pick this one, and it'll just keep going from there until you click outside where there's nothing to dimension, or just hit escape. We'll do it again. I started my regular dimension command, and then on the command line, there's the option here of continue, which you can either pick with your cursor or type C to make happen. And then you pick the dimension that is the one you want to base the others on, and then can keep on going like that. And I guess just hitting escape because you don't want that last one. AutoCAD will dimension just to points in space. They don't even need to be connected to anything. And again, it's not like these are all one thing. They just happen to be dimensions that currently occupy the same space as these lines. The way stretching works with dimensions and objects together is, let's say I wanted to make this, instead of 3'5", be say 7 feet. Do S for stretch, click, and click, and I'll be picking all the vertices inside that rectangle, and along with them the lines that they define. Hit enter, and then drag them out, and the dimension goes as well, because we are moving its definition point. This could be any amount of stuff being pulled over there and staying in relationship with itself. We have a couple of different dimensions with circles, radial and diameter. And you can decide where you want that placed. A lot of times it goes to the outside. You can also do diameters. The diameter symbol is a theta. It's a Greek letter picked because it looks like a circle with a line going across it. And so that's sort of what we have here, which is a diameter is a circle with a line going across it. And these can be moved around. Oh, here's another thing. If a piece of text doesn't fit where you want it, because you've got a room name there or something or other, you can simply click on the piece of text, grab the piece of text's own grip, right sort of in the middle of the text, and then move it wherever you want it to go. And you might want to turn ortho off for that, so you get a freedom of movement for that. Something you can do, but I want you never to do, because it cost the firm that I worked for about $10,000 when I did it, which is to fake a dimension. If you click on that 7 feet and just write 10 feet, they will build it 10 feet. I just changed the piece of text. In Revit, you change the text and everything moves. There could be good reasons for it. I thought I had one. I had done this for some reason on a metal door in a reinforced concrete wall, and they had to cut it out and cut a new hole and put it in and reconcrete it. And it was profoundly embarrassing. They didn't make me pay for it. Right? So never do that. In fact, I wrote a little program that will turn all those, it's called a forced dimension. We'll turn all them purple just so you can see them on the screen. But I never want to have to do that with you guys. We're going to keep on working on your apartment drawings with casework and fixtures and furniture and like that. You can change all your existing dimensions to your new dimension style. And a way you can do that is select a dimension, Control C, go into the drawing, go into your apartment drawing and paste it. And then that dimension will bring with it that is style, and then you can apply the style to all the others. I've run out of things to talk about, and you can stick around or ask questions. Yes.